Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. This episode is about sports card protection. I was contacted by Bart McClary, a frequent contributor, who asked me who is the godfather of sports card protection. Bart, I'm sure it's not me, but I probably know some candidates who could be considered for that, who would be on the Mount Rushmore of sports card protection and supplies. First of all, thank you, sponsors. I don't really have a supply sponsor, but I have card companies, Topps, Panini, and Upper Deck, auctions, Heritage Auctions, and Huggins & Scott, card shops that sell a lot of supplies, Rob Veras at Burbank Sports Cards, and Mike Fruitman, now part of the Triple Cards team in Aurora, Colorado. Finally, ComC.com and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, which Beckett also has Southern Hobby Supplies and Arcane Tinman. So they're in that space now, but we're talking about way back, the Godfather. And I think, Bart, you're talking historically. When I came in, there were shoeboxes. And the beautiful part, I've never really thought about the simplicity of this, but I probably got a new pair of tennis shoes every year as a kid. That shoebox for my Converse or Keds or whatever it was, probably Converse back in the day, would hold 500 or 600 cards, which would be the size of a 59 top set. So I'm sure I got a pair of shoes in 59, and I put my 59 cards in a tennis shoebox. And same thing the next year, perhaps. So for a few years there, I think one shoebox per year, and I got one pair of shoes each year. So the rhythm worked. But as I got bigger and as I got into an adult and got into the modern hobby where people were setting up at shows and having LCS card stores, there needed to be supplies. I don't remember when the first penny sleeve came up. It's a very simple concept. But when grading came on, I think penny sleeves got a boost there. They're penny sleeves because they cost less than a penny. But they keep the fingerprints off. And I just don't think they protect the card other than fingerprints. You could still ding a corner. But frankly, the new ones are much clearer than the old ones. Some of the ones from back in the beginning were made of a different type of plastic material that was foggy or milky. But these are crystal clear, the new ones, and they frankly make it a lot easier to go through the dollar boxes or any of the value boxes. If the cards are penny sleeved, they don't stick together usually as much. Okay, as long as nobody's been having lunch when they were handling the penny sleeves. Next, as I build up from penny sleeves, top loaders, card savers, semi-rigids, the category of a little bit stiffer, a little bit more protection to the corners. Frankly, especially with top loaders, you have to get the right thickness because there's some cards that are too thick to go in a standard top loader. The card savers, there's some smaller ones and some bigger ones. They're not real small, but they'll handle a standard size card. But then there's another size up that more comfortably holds. And I don't like those as much. I don't like card savers as much because I think it sometimes can be tricky to get them in there. Top loaders are easier, but for grading submissions, the grading companies prefer card saver submissions. When I send my cards into ComC, I don't penny sleeve them or top load them or card saver them. In fact, if you card saver or top load them, they're going to charge you to take it out. But I pack securely. Actually, I have had a problem one time, one out of many times. I think somebody dropped the box on the corner or something like that, and I'm not sure. Top loader would probably protect that, and maybe card savers too, but not worth the charge to de-sleeve them. Plastic sheets were a big deal back in the day. I don't know if that's a Godfather type thing. The first thing I thought of, Bart, when you talked about the Godfather, because you sent me a picture of an 800 count box that had a 30s Art Deco feel to it because it has Frankie Frisch, Al Simmons, Jimmy Fox, and Lou Gehrig. Three of them are the R320. Lou Gehrig says 34 Gaudis, and then the Al Simmons is a Diamond Star. I remember those, and I had some of those, and I think that was the first cardboard box. And I think Charlie Brooks was the one that did those because he was the one that did the Gaudi reprints and had a real eye for that and was one of the early stores up in Detroit of this sport hobbyist. And I think Charlie may have done that. He was a very enterprising guy. Of course, later on, the boxes, as we got into the 70s, my close friend Gervis Ford and business partner in the store for many years here and just my first organized hobby contact. He got a deal with Inland Container, which was one of the corrugated companies, a company where I actually worked some summers and Christmases up there, and they had a big corrugated operation. And he, I think, designed, or along with the plant manager who turned out to be a collector, designed a cardboard box. The only thing that was different about that, I really was ahead of its time because of Gervis being such a vintage guy, is that it fit 56 tops. Most of the mass-produced card boxes, 800 count or smaller, really handle 2.5 by 3.5. In fact, if you say it's a 800 count, it's only 800 count if you deal with cards from the 70s. And cards were thicker in the 50s a little bit, and they're way thicker now. So you really can't, in a 400 count box, you can't get 400 cards. You might get 350. In fact, you might even get less depending on the thickness of the cards. My other business partner in my publishing ventures right at the beginning, Denny Eckes, who was a great friend and really solid business guy and really was just so instrumental in getting me in gear to do what I think I was supposed to do, and he took care of everything else. But one of the reasons he was a natural business partner for me is because he was setting up at all these shows. So I'd see him all the time, a very likable guy. We got along great. But he was not selling very many cards. He sold some smaller sets, but mainly he sold supplies. And I'd love for him to be the godfather of sports card protection, but that might be some bias there. But he did big business in plastic sheets, wholesale. He had a storefront in Laurel in the Baltimore area, but mainly he was doing shows and doing mail order. He was just buying in volume and then selling in volume. He had all these different sizes. He was famous for no discounts other than quantity. Another good friend and never really partnered with, Robbie Shipp, I think the founder of Ultra Pro, and a good friend, and I think not as active in the industry lately, but a lot of great products. In fact, when our company was doing some things, they were one of our go-to places for creatively coming up with solutions for supplies and other kinds of things. BCW up in Indiana is who I use now for getting my cardboard boxes. I don't think they invented it, but they've been around for a long time. They have lots of different sizes. They do some TCG stuff as well as some sports card stuff and as well as memorabilia stuff. Steve Rodman, a name from the past, was a very advanced collector, but also had, I think, some furniture stores. But on the side, off his loading dock, he also had plastic sheets. Plastic sheets is not the way I go. And if you were around less than 40 years ago, I got sued over an article in our magazine that was not an expose, but just a treatment of the PVC plastic sheets, which were being discovered as being detrimental to the long-term health of cards based on temperature and humidity. We got sued by one of the largest sellers because he said, "You crushed our business." Basically, I think his argument was, I am innocent until proven guilty, and you haven't proven that these sheets are defective, or if there is a long-term, you haven't done a long-term study. And I thought, this is silly. My eyes don't lie. I can see the cards. But his defense would be, but then you must have left those out in the sun or put them in the oven. Show me a double-blind study that has these plastic sheets. And I think he was wrong, but we wound up, we had a lot of legal fees, and it was just a big mess. So that's not the reason I don't keep my cards in plastic sheets. I think it's an excellent way, again, as long as they're the right kind of sheets. But even then, when there's plastic sheets, whoever the Godfather was, if they're not top-loaded plastic sheets and they come out the side, you can have collateral damage. Anybody remember John Connor? I think John Connor was the guy who was a great salesperson. I think he's not in the hobby anymore, but I think he was the inventor of the mag, the one-touch thing. And that was many decades ago, 3 decades ago, probably in the late 80s or early 90s. So I don't think he's around, but he was a very enterprising guy, and that was a contribution. I do think there's more protection, and protection is good, but he is not the godfather of sports card protection. Bart, I'm going between Denny Eckes as a sentimental choice, Robbie Shipp, who's also a good friend, Gervis Ford, Charlie Brooks, all guys I knew personally. That is not fair. And yet you get in the Hall of Fame by being elected by the Baseball Writers Association of America, and they vote for people they like. Now, they vote for good players, too. I haven't mentioned the Zion cases. Again, I don't carry those myself. I carry a backpack, and my backpack is big enough that actually it'll fit a double shoe graded box. So in case I would pick up graded cards or cards in the Vigor card savers, they'll fit in there. And they're on my backpack, and I keep my other supplies in there. So that's been my standard go-to, ready to go. The slab bumpers or the slab necklaces, things like that, that's not me, but I think that is a contribution. I love it when there's creativity showing off your slabs. That's great. The other good thing for slabs, especially when they're hermetically sealed, we took great care with BGS to try to develop a holder that would be protective. I have noticed that if you drop them, they do crack, the corners crack. Okay. If you drop them from 6 feet onto cement, don't do that. Okay. Don't try to bounce them. Now, the Lucite's, if you remember back, that was one of the worst things, is the big Lucite bulletproof holders that were screw downs. I still find some of those in value boxes. Usually it's more than $1. Actually, these Lucite holders probably cost more than $1. But when they were screwed down too tight, they actually could damage the card when you unloose the screws. The challenge I've had now is when I'm not traveling in the air, I could bring a screwdriver to unscrew if that happens. But if I go to the National and I buy some cards that are in these things like that, unless I can borrow a screwdriver, I can't bring it on the plane with me. And so I don't want to bring that home. I throw those Lucite things in the trash. I suppose there's a reuse for them, but I don't know. Penny sleeves, cardboard boxes, plastic sheets, just the advent of grading for more secure holders. It's one of the reasons I grade cards, is because I think it does give them extra protection, more so than just a raw card review, which is a top loader with tape on it. So Bart, thanks for your question. Maybe I'd be better at composing a Mount Rushmore. Larry Fritch, if anybody needed a lot of boxes, I don't know that it was as much him, because I was up at his place. That's a 7 Wonders of the World type thing. He wasn't repackaging. He had unopened boxes and cases, and he had vending boxes that came right straight. So he wasn't repacking things. So he didn't really need, other than mailing out his mail order business, which most of his business was mail order. And frankly, and this is not the godfather of sports card protection, but Larry Fritch, the maximum protection was he had a safe. He had a big safe in his house, and he had a big safe in Cooperstown, and he had another big safe somewhere else. His best cards, because he had 3 sets of almost everything. He's really an amazing guy. But the best protection is in the bank, in a vault, which could be your own vault or could be some other vault. But my maximum protected cards are in the bank. And frankly, they're not in BGS. The cards I have at the bank are protected by being in the safe deposit box. They're not protected by being in grading holders, or even they're in these Lucite little plastic boxes, not the ones with the hinges, but the ones where they fit over there. And they're very snug. Again, you don't want an oversized card, but they fit in there nicely. So anyway, Bart, thanks for your question. And thanks, everybody. Have a good holiday season. I'm going to keep going. Next year is going to be great, I'm hoping. And keep your cards protected, and see you again soon.